Hello and welcome to this session of your Introduction to Google Analytics 4 short course. In this session, we're going to be looking at the Explore functionality of Google Analytics 4 a little bit closer. So Rachel, what can you tell us about the Explore section of Google Analytics 4 then?
Yeah, so in the Explore section, we're going to take a walk through all the functionality that exists, but ultimately that's where you can start to build your own reports. So something that Google have brought into this a bit more is that ability to change the data and transform the data in a different way. You can start a deep dive into it. You can save them and you can keep them so you go back to them time and time again. And there's quite a few different types of visualizations that are available in that platform as well. So quite a lot of functionality that exists. So we're going to learn a bit more about what you can do in that platform and what those sort of different report types would look like. Explore is a powerful tool to help aid with understanding your audience and being able to make comparisons. It really goes beyond the standard reports that are available within the platform to help you provide insight, deeper analysis, and an understanding in your customer behaviors to really truly interrogate the data that exists within your Google Analytics 4 platform. There are some sort of example uses where we think this might be quite useful, where we think there's going to be benefit in exploring this bit of functionality. It allows you to quickly perform ad hoc queries, pull data quite fast and in the right format that you need it to be in. You can focus on the most relevant data by applying filters and segments to slice the data in any way, shape or form that you need to. You can share the reports with others for quick use and collaboration. And then it's a good way of exporting the data into other tools. There are a few limits to be aware of. So just to let you know that per user per property, you can only create up to 200 individual explores. And then as a blanket, in the whole account, you're only allowed up to 500 shared explorations. You are allowed 10 segments per exploration and up to 10 filters per tab. So there are a few limits, but they actually are quite high limits. So it shouldn't be too much of a concern for normal day-to-day use. When we head into the Explore section, you can see that you can start a new exploration. You've got blank, or there are quite a few different templates that already exist. And what we'll go through now is we'll go through the different types of templates that exist and a bit more how to use this section and understand it a bit more in detail, a bit more practical. So Freeform is all about letting you explore your data using basic tables and graphs. So for example, you can visualize the data in a table or a graph or different types of graphs. You can arrange and order the data by rows and columns. You can compare metrics side by side, and you can also refine the data using segments. So if we click into Freeform and have a play around with this, the best thing to know in here is that it kind of works best left to right. That's almost how you should populate this report. So for example, I'm just going to clear everything out for now. You'll see right now we've got a Freeform report, and then we've got blank in terms of segments, dimensions and metrics, and then our whole report under tab settings is blank. So like I say, work left to right. And if you go into dimensions, you need to add in what you think you would want to use. So for example, I might add in gender, I might add in device, and then I might want to add in channel, for example. And I'm going to import all of them, and you can see they're populated there ready to use. For metrics, I might add in sessions and might add in revenue. As I head over to the next column, you can see that I've got different types of visualizations. So a table, a donut chart, a line chart, a scatter plot, a bar chart, or a map. You've got the ability to add segments in there, and then you start to build it. So for example, for my rows, I might want to have channel. In my columns, I don't have a second metric that I want, so I'm going to skip that one for now. And then in my values, I might have sessions. And then this will populate the table. At the tab here at the top, I can change that to say channel, for example, or call it whatever you would want it to be. You could also drag in here and I could add a filter to say, for example, only show me channels that equal organic. And if I was to press apply, my table is filtered like that. But I'll get rid of that for now. In the next tab, for example, I might want a donut chart. And this time I might want to put gender. That's quite a common metric that would be used in a donut chart. And I might want to put a value in there as sessions. So you see, as I hover over this now, I can see that using the date filter to be current quarter to date, desktop has 115,000 sessions. I hover over mobile, that's 72,000, and tablet with 11,000 there. And you can kind of interact with these as well, which is quite good. And then similarly, things like, what does a line chart look like? So this is what your line charts might look like. And you see it's got anomaly detection in there by default. You can turn that off or on if you want to. And then you've got, like if I jump to a bar chart, for example, this is quite standard. What you might have there, I might swap that out to be revenue, for example, and look at it in a different way. I can see, for example, the revenue that's associated with these. And if I don't want to, if I decide I don't want this tab, I can just delete that out quite easily. And that is basically how you use the freeform tables. And then lastly, you give this a name. So whatever you would say this should be. And the thing is, this data saves automatically. So these reports are saving automatically for you. So if I headed back into the Explore section now, you can see that my reports exist here, and I can delete them and get rid of them, or I can save them depending on what it is that I actually want to do. And that is how you use freeform. The next type of report that you can have in the Explore section is funnel exploration. So this is all about helping you visualize the steps that a user takes to complete a task. So that could be, for example, a checkout process. It might be, for example, the steps that someone takes to inquire. It might be steps that someone takes if they are signing up to an event or a webinar. You also get the option to decide whether funnels are open and closed. So this is logic that determines where someone can enter the funnel. For example, if you're saying that if the funnel is open, that means users can join at any step. That gives you a lot more understanding in terms of whether the customer journey that you believe should be happening is the actual customer journey that is happening, or if that isn't the case at all. So we'll take a look at the funnel explorations now. So if we click blank, and this time we want to change the technique to be funnel exploration. And then we need to decide what elements we're using in our funnel. So it's most likely going to be page and potentially event name, because maybe that's the most common steps that I think I'm going to need to use in my funnel. And then I've got my metrics of event count and total users depending on what I decide that I want to do here. So this is where you've got the option to make it an open funnel or not. And we'll look at this sort of difference in these as we build the funnel itself. If we go into steps, this is where you can edit your steps. And this is where we need to build the journey that we want the users to go on. Because the demo account that we're working on is the merchandise store, I'm going to use this to understand what steps I think I want the user to take and pull out the key bits of information. For example, I might want to know when someone is viewing a product page, and then I've got to add in my condition here. So just bear with me while I build this funnel. The next step is going to be add to basket. This time I'm tracking that with an event. And then my next step in here might be begin checkout. And then my next and final step might be someone actually making a purchase. So I'm picking that all from my events. There are different parameters that you could use throughout this. So for example, as you go down, you can say, is it indirectly or directly followed by, and if there's a certain time frame that you want that to be within, and you can list and or all conditions at each step as well. And then this bit at the right hand side there kind of tells you how many users that would capture. This is saying nothing for the last one, so I'm just going to remove a step and see if I can get some data in here, so that we've got something to analyze. So there's 50 users here, so I'm going to press apply. And then what you can do is you can see that this is giving me a funnel. So how many people add to basket, what the amount of users is that then begin checkout, and then what the amount of users that actually purchases. And then in my table underneath, I can see the users, the completion rate, the abundance, and the abandonment rate. Once I've made that funnel, that's saved, and then I can constantly review back on this and see how that's going, as well as changing the date range and interacting with it like that. And then just to show you the kind of funnel toggle, so that was obviously a closed funnel. This will now be an open funnel. So what you can see is actually the amount of new funnel entries versus continuing funnel entries. So not many people did the add to basket. They just straight away started at the checkout. That could be for lots of different reasons, for example, depending on the products that are available, etc. And then you can see like new funnel entries that appear at the purchase stage. So that's really interesting, because you can then start to analyze, what do you think your customer journey should be versus what it actually is. The next type of visualization is path exploration. So this really helps you explore user journeys using a tree graph. So for example, some of the use cases for this type of reporting visual might be to help you understand the top pages that new users open after the home page. It might be discovering what users take after a certain interaction in the app. It might be to uncover that there's a loop behavior, which indicates like maybe it's not the right call to action on the page, or the user doesn't quite know where they need to go next. Or it might be able to determine the effect of an event and what that does to the user's actions and what it does afterwards. So if we were to take this visual, for example, you can see that you've got this many people in session start, and then most of them would trigger the next event, which is a page view. And then from that next event, it's view promotion, for example. You can change these, so you can say, you can change that a page path. And then, for example, what you've got is, of that many session starts, how many go to the home page. They've got a lot of traffic that's hitting not set. They've got a stationery page, an apparel page, etc., and 15 more. And you can click into these, and these continue to sort of stagger down like that to understand. You can click a specific route. So for example, if I just wanted to know through the home page, I could then see what pages they go to afterwards. I could also flip that back to events and then see what users are doing from the home page. So viewing a promotion, or a new engaged user, or having a session, like their session starts, etc. So it is really interesting. You can keep going down and digging into this sort of tree route, and it's really useful for beginning to understand how people are interacting with your website, where they're spending the most time, what is a common sort of journey for them to take after that, which I think makes it really helpful when you are trying to understand a bit about the customer journey on your website. It's not the easiest to read and interpret, but it can be quite useful. And again, like for example, you could drop a segment in here. For example, if I just pulled paid traffic in there, and then you can do that analysis specifically for paid traffic to your website. So again, if you are paying for ads to your website and paying for users to come visit your website, you want to make sure that they aren't getting stuck in a loop and they can do what they need to do. So any analysis that you can use to understand that is really, really helpful, and that's how path exploration works. Another visual that exists, which is segment overlap. So this allows you to create subsets of users, sessions, and events. And the idea is that it allows you to compare up to 3 user segments and understand how these would overlap and relate to each other. You can then begin to isolate audiences based on those set of conditions. And you might want to create new segments based off your findings if you find overlap that you didn't quite necessarily know what existed. So if we were to take a look at an example of how this would work, and you could think of this in some of the most simplistic sort of metrics that are dimensions that you know, for example, like overlap between, say, device and age or something like that. This is an example comparing mobile traffic, tablet traffic, and the demographic of age 25 to 54-year-olds. So as you can see, mobile and tablet don't overlap, and that's obvious because you can only use one device or the other. Mobile traffic only is around 28,000 active users, and 25 to 54-year-olds is around 5.7k active users. And then you've got this little slither in the middle, which is people who are on mobile traffic and fit that age demographic, and that is 1.3 thousand users. And then as these bubbles get smaller, the audience there gets smaller. And then all of this data is tabularized underneath, for example. So the most active users come from the mobile traffic pot, and then it's the mobile traffic only pot. Then you've got your 25 to 54-year-olds and the 25 to 54-year-olds only. And then you've got your tablet traffic as a whole, tablet traffic only. And then you've got your first overlap, which is mobile traffic and the demographics. And that's at that 1.3. And therefore, because that comes so far down in this list after all of the singular bubbles, this wouldn't really be a segment that's important to you because it doesn't have a big reach to go after, and therefore would hold little value to you and your business. And that's how you would begin to understand these. You'd understand what the overlap is between different segments, understanding the users, and then if that audience and active audience pot is big enough, you could maybe then use it for paid activity and from Facebook targeting, for example, or tailor your messaging or your blog content to kind of overlap with these segments that you've identified. There are two other reports that we're not going to go into in too much detail, purely because of the functionality. It doesn't always exist on the website. Another visual is all around understanding your user's lifetime value. This is about how you analyze your user behavior and the value that they hold to you over the lifetime of being a customer. So for example, you might use this if you wanted to understand the source medium or the campaign that are driving users with a high lifetime value, or if they are requiring users who are expected to be more valuable than normal. And then also you've got the ability to just understand insight as to when they were last active or when they last purchased. I can show you an example of this in the platform. However, if you are non-e-commerce, then this is a section that doesn't really hold too much insight for you. So if we were just to take a look at this table that's pre-populated here, this is looking at the dimension about medium. So that's like whether it was paid or organic, etc. And then you can see here, it's got total users, the lifetime value average, the engagement, and the average number of transactions. But for example, on email, there's seen a small amount of users, but the average lifetime value is much higher at $8 rather than the site average at $1. The engagement time's much higher, and the average volume of transactions is much higher. So that's how you'd be able to understand where that value comes from. But for example, you could swap medium out to be campaign, and then you would do the same sort of analysis but with the paid campaigns that you're running to understand where your high lifetime value customers are coming from, for example. And then lastly, the last type of visualization that we have is cohort exploration, and this is to help you gain insights from users that are related by common attributes. What we were talking about is a cohort is new users are usually acquired on the same sort of day. But the idea behind this is it allows you to explore behaviors of these groups of users over times, but the cohorts are calculated based on the user's device only. So if we click into this report, and then you can see it's got a little bit of a summary here for you of this data. So what this is showing is the cell of active users for users who had any event in the week after their acquisition date. So for example, you can see that on the 28th of Jan, which was week 0, there were 1,470 users acquired. 91 of those came back in week 1, which you can see here was 6.2%. And then that drops to 25 in week 2, etc., etc. As you go all the way down to February, we've got the amount of users acquired yesterday, which was 2,084. And this has no subsequent data for the following weeks because that hasn't happened yet. But overall, this doesn't really tell you a lot without being able to do more with it. So I think kind of the last two visuals we've touched on, lifetime value and cohort, are probably the ones that you'd use the least, whereas your funnel and your freeform tables are the ones you're probably going to use the most. It's worth noting that there is a template gallery that does show all of these predefined templates. There's a lot of use cases and different sort of industries that kind of exist right now as well, but it's still quite basic. But this is great for you to go in and have a play around with, feel more familiar with, and then become very comfortable being able to pull some of that data as you would need to out of the platform. And then while they do pre-save into the explorations bit, you do have to go in and choose to share it. I can't share this example right now because this is just the demo account. Using those 3 dots, that's how you would share it to other members of the team if you wanted to collaborate and make them, because once you've spent the time invested making these reports, you can just use the same reports time and time again to get the insights that you need. I think the key thing about this section is you need to understand that there might be some differences in the data that you see between the reports area of Google Analytics 4 and the Explore area. There's a couple of reasons why this data might be different, and so you just need to be aware of it and I suppose keep it in the back of the mind as you're utilizing this functionality within the platform. The first being that some metrics and dimensions that are available within the reports area aren't actually supported in Explore, so you can't always do like for like. The second being sampling, so reports are unsampled, meaning that they're based on 100% of the data available, whereas Explore could be based on sample data if the data set is very large, so you do have to be careful in the type of analysis that you're doing there. And then also there's a limit on processing time, so if your date range includes data from the past 24 hours, then you might notice slight differences in the results that are being given based on when the data is processed, because you can't always get that real-time data of how things are performing. Explore really does allow you to take a deeper dive into your data and help provide insights on performance. There are so many different types of reports available depending on the data that you're trying to analyze. You need to figure out which is the right type of visualization for the work that you're doing. They do save by default, which makes it really easy to jump back in to a report, and once you've spent the time and effort doing it once, then you don't have to do it again. There might be data discrepancies, as we've just touched on, between what you see in the report section versus the Explore section, so you need to be careful and be aware of that when you are pulling data and explaining it. And then lastly, you need to set them to share if you want others to be able to collaborate with you on that.